All right. So today
Mhm.
I'm talking with Natalie Jennings. She's a photographer and a podcaster over at Photo Business Help. And she is an intuitive business mentor, the founder of The Greenhouse. She's in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which she thinks nobody ever talks about. But I disagree. One thing that I like that you're doing over there, Natalie, I'm just going to start with this because I just really love this phrase that you have on your website is this idea of growing with your business. And I just think it's such a cool angle to come at with your coaching is that, hey, we're not just going to talk about business. We're not just going to talk about photography. We're going to actually work on growing you as a human being as well. And I really like that. And I like that visual of the greenhouse as well. Like this idea that, hey, we're going to grow all of this all at once. I just think that's cool. Kudos.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on the show. It was fun chatting with you last time we had our chat. So, yeah, you're one of the first people that has really brought that up. And it's one of my favorite parts. It makes me think of, I don't know if you've ever heard that Stephen King thing where he talks about killing your darlings. And there was a
Yeah.
period where I was like, oh God, this is my favorite thing. Am I going to have to just kill it because nobody's responding to it? But as it's grown, as I've shaped the program and gotten used to talking about it, I think that is one of the easiest ways to describe what I do as a coach is just helping people recognize that they are not a separate thing from their business, especially if they're a sole proprietor, one person service based. Maybe you have like a second shooter or something, but for the most part, people that I speak to, lifestyle photographers, are doing it all themselves. And to think that whatever's going on with you personally does not affect your business, I think is silly.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons that I was just so excited to have this follow-up call with you was this idea that these two things are just inextricably linked, that when one grows, the other one does as well, or at least should. And if it doesn't, then there's going to be an imbalance there. If your business suddenly grows, but you don't grow as a human being and as a business owner and as all of these things, then there's going to be an imbalance there. There's going to be an issue there. And likewise, I don't know that it actually can happen the other way. I think if you grow as a human being, it's probably naturally gonna bring your business up along with it, but yeah,
And I think that's the idea. Yeah. Yeah. That if you're stuck, it's likely your own crap. It's likely you getting in your own way, you
yeah,
not having worked through confidence issues or productivity issues. A lot of people procrastinate like crazy or just having clarity, which we talked about a little bit before. But just, I believe that all of that plays a role in how quickly you get to A to B, whatever your A or B is. There isn't like a right or wrong one. But yeah, I think it's a
yeah,
huge thing. And procrastination to me is just like a massive sign that you have zero clarity. And I'm the best at it. I'm so good at procrastinating. I want to go play phone games
sure.
and just lay on the couch. And when I see that pattern showing up, I immediately now can take my own advice and go, okay, what are you not clear on? Because when you're clear, it's just so easy to sit down and do the thing. But most of us have to do lists that are like insane, that don't even make sense. And then we sit
Yeah,
down and we're like, ah, I'm going to go play a video game instead.
yeah, it's nap time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Yeah, I'm just gonna go take a nap instead because this is overwhelming me, and now I'm tired.
Yeah. I'm just going to
Uh,
lie down until I get a better idea. That
it
doesn't,
didn't work. It doesn't work,
yeah.
yeah. Something that we talked about the other day, and I really wanna focus in on today is this idea of clarity and of what you were just saying. Like sometimes it's just your own crap that's getting in your way. That a lot of times photographers, they look and they say, okay, I need a new website, or I need more clients, or I need to run this fancy new marketing thing that I saw, or show me how to run Facebook ads and all of this stuff. And really all we're doing is putting a band-aid on much bigger problems. They may
Mhm.
work, these things may work, it may help them short term, but long term, there's something more foundational that's an issue. And I think that what you're doing over there is really focusing on those foundational issues before you even start talking about the nuts and bolts and the practical stuff. So, tell us a little bit more about that. What is it that you're doing over there? I remember you said that a lot of times you'll have to say, okay, cool. I know that you want to do this, but let's take a few steps back first and talk about this.
Right.
Yeah. Walk me through some of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the main thing is like a lot of folks come to any kind of coach or coaching program wanting just show me how to do it. And that is part of it. Like we're trying to abridge kind of or aggregate a lot of information, get you from A to B a lot faster. That is true. And so you are going to learn, like you learn how to do like a blog or a newsletter or whatever, or like what's a welcome sequence. Like people want to know how to do these things, but the peeling back the layers part is fascinating because underneath wanting to do all those things is generally imposter syndrome. As I said, like a total lack of clarity, a deep sort of misaligned relationship with money, like knowing what you're worth. Oh, I can't charge that much, all that kind of stuff. Thinking money's bad when it's actually just a neutral player. It's just it. And we assign a lot of meaning to things. So just peeling back the layers and recognizing where our own crap is and how that shows up all the time. And every time a client emails you and that crap is at the surface, you are going to be like, I'll give them a discount and maybe I'll let them pick the date. And like all the stuff that you said, I'm not going to let people do this anymore. You start, I don't know, falling apart a little bit. And if that happens day after day, you can look back in 6 months or a year and kind of go, why am I not growing? Why is my
Yeah.
business not doing very well? Or where maybe it's not where you want it to be. But those deeper layers, I am a photographer, so that is why I'm doing this kind of work, but, like, this is for everything. I could
Yes.
technically teach everything that I teach other than the nuts and bolts, like you said, to just about anybody, and one of the things we talked about that you were like, "Whoa," was I open and close the coaching program with tarot readings, which I've probably lost some people, but the approach
Yeah.
see you later. No, and I am very careful to make sure it's clear that I'm using this as a tool that's not you don't have to believe in anything. It's literally like the same as a coin flip. We could take a coin and say, do you want to do newborns or weddings? And then weddings is heads, and we flip the coin and it's heads. And some part of your body is like, yay, or oh.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that is where your answers are. That is where your guidance system is. And whether you believe that there's some spiritual intervention or not does not matter. So I use tarot in that respect to do what I call business readings. So just connecting people to patterns and stuff in their business. And it is so powerful. It's so silly because it's something that I just threw in there because I enjoy it as a hobby. And it's absolutely one of people's favorite things. So I think when we can get beyond all of this stuff that we could likely just Google, like SEO and stuff like that, and really look at what it takes to be quote unquote successful or happy in your business. That's where all the stuff is.
Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting point is that the nuts and bolts, the practical stuff is stuff that you can find basically anywhere for free. It's the stuff that absolutely helpful to have a coach who's going to walk you through it and point out the pitfalls and the dangerous spots. But for the most part, the how do I set up a welcome sequence or a nurture sequence? That's stuff that you can learn anywhere. The stuff that you're talking about, though, is the stuff where you need somebody on the outside looking in saying, look, I don't see the same things that you see. I see more than you see, or I don't have the same mental blocks that you have when it comes to you. So that's fascinating. That is not something that I don't think had ever really put into words that like, yeah, the strategies, the tactics, these are all things that we could learn. Again, definitely helpful to find somebody who can walk you through them faster. Like you said, condense them down to it took me a decade to learn this. I'm going to teach it to you in 6 weeks, apparently, or
That's
whatever.
right.
But yeah, now to be able to say, but here's the stuff that you can't just Google. Here's the stuff that does take some wrestling with it and some back and forth with someone who is going to tell you what they see and is maybe going to hold you accountable to stuff that you won't hold yourself accountable to. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Cool. I just noticed we have the same glasses. Anyway,
Oh, yes.
they're like the same shape. Exactly. People are listening. Sorry, listeners, if you're watching
Oh, no,
or
you're fine.
whatever. But you're
Probably
the
already
thing
noticed too.
I always just spit out weird things, but what you're saying is the thing that I think people get the most results from and the most growth out of. I mean, if we're going to use that word, because it really is, you need a little bit of a push from someone that can look from the outside in and go, hey, I've heard you say 10 times in the last 3 minutes, I'm not very good at whatever, but, or I can't, but, or I haven't done this yet. But when you listen to people's language, especially when you're coaching them intimately one on one or in a small group, it is bonkers what comes out of people's mouths. And just that alone is going to hinder your business. And even though people might think it doesn't, it really does. And yes, I teach all the nuts and bolts stuff like that's in there, but like you can't really do much with that if you don't have some of this other stuff nailed down or figured out because it's just part of, again, when you're one on one with people, and I'm making it clear that's the sort of framework I work with, because if you're working in a big company, that's who you are and how you show up is going to play a role, but not to the degree that it does when it's like your own saying and you're running it. No one's telling you what to do and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So it makes me think of the phrase that the smallest hinges move the biggest doors. Have you ever heard that?
Oh,
So it's
no.
this, isn't it a cool phrase? So this idea that at the door here, at that spot, it's just this tiny little movement at the hinge. But
That's
depending on how
right.
big that door is, it's a massive change. And
That's right.
that's what I mean, that's really what we're talking about is that, okay, cool. Yeah, we'll teach you how to set up emails and forms and blah, blah, blah. But if we can make even these tiny shifts at such a
Mm,
foundational stage, that's that tiny hinge that's going to make massive movements in your business. And
yeah.
like you said,
I'm
that's the stuff that really matters.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I think, first of all, people think that there's some like magic explosive thing that happens when people quote unquote succeed or do well, but it truly is incremental. One of the things I bring up in my program a lot, I sometimes use the analogy of growing your hair out, right? So if you can do a little bit every day, you're not going to notice it like at the end of the week, but at the end of the month, maybe a little. And at the end of 6 months, for sure, thinking about it that way. And also when you think about poor decisions or decisions that kind of get you off track, I always use the analogy of two ships setting out parallel. And one of them makes a bad call and they're just like slightly off. And for a while, it seems like they're not really off track. But 6 months from now, again, when you add that time component to both of these analogies, they're like in totally different parts of the
Yeah.
ocean or wherever they are. And so those small things don't feel necessarily always like fireworks or massive ahas, but they are generally the ones that make all the difference. And I do, and also with the tarot and the looking and digging deeper, like people do have big ahas. So it's like this really cool combination of really healing and having like a better foundation, but also making small incremental decisions that really
Yeah.
totally flip things around.
Even those small things at again, at such a foundational level can still feel like these big light bulb moments. I don't remember if
Hmm.
we talked about it the other day when you and I were just chatting, but it's this idea of I think about this a lot, this idea that for some reason I sometimes need to be given permission to do things, to think things, to dream things. The best example I can think of is my ex-girlfriend. She wasn't at the time. It would have been weird that I was hanging out at her house when she was ex. But she had just gone off to college. I was at the community college and really had no hadn't even really thought about going to a 4-year college. And her mom was just like, "Oh, you could just go apply there." I could. Yeah, I guess I could. I know that it really this story just makes me sound really stupid that I didn't even realize that, oh, that's a thing that I could do. It was just not even something that had crossed my mind. And just having that person say, you know, that you could do that too. Like they make debt, basically.
Yeah.
They make debt for students. And that's a whole topic in and of
Yeah.
itself. But
That's a different
um
thing.
yeah, but just that one person saying, "Hey, I actually believe that you was enough for me to say, man, I hadn't even really even thought about it." So again, it's a tiny little realization that made a massive change. And it was this light bulb aha moment. And it's something that I think about a lot now when I talk to photographers and I say things like, oh, you could absolutely make $100,000 a year as a photographer. But it's like a lot of times people just don't even give themselves permission to think about that, let alone
Yeah.
think about how they could do it. So to be able to be in that spot, to be able to give somebody that permission that they don't necessarily need from me, but to be that person who can say, "Hey, no, this is absolutely doable," and just even open the door for them to peek through and say, "Oh, crap, maybe I can actually do that."
Yeah.
I just, I think that's for some reason that feels like that's all tied in with what we're talking about here. This idea of these small aha moments that aren't all that small. That they may seem small to you and I as we say things like, "Yeah, you could go to college," but it's
Right.
massive for that person. Yeah.
Totally. And I think what happens when people think of time and financial investment is like when they hear a story like that, the thought is like, I'm not going to pay money for that to change my life. I can just go find it or read about it. And I think that's where people miss out really on some really massive growth and change is that you can you can discover so much more about yourself and have so many more of those moments in a situation where it's designed for you to get you there. And it's not always necessarily these huge things. When I heard that two parallel ships thing, I was like, "Mm?" It was like it totally because it that one analogy informs so many decisions I make throughout the day because I'm constantly going, is this in 3 months or 6 months gonna put me on course to Fiji when I'm not going there. I don't know where else I
Right.
would be going, but that's not.
But I'm gonna say you should probably shift course to Fiji if we're being
Yes,
honest.
yeah, that's probably the way I'd wanna go, so, okay,
Right.
we can you get it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm following. So, what would you say as you work with photographers? What would you say is there one most common thing that you see people struggle with? Is there one most common starting point where you say, "Hey, I know you want to get to this, but we need to step back and look at this thing first." I probably should have told you
Yeah.
that I was going to ask you
Y
this
no, that's
question.
okay. No, but it's good to just think of it on the fly here. Again, there's, like, the 2 camps. There's the self camp, and then there's the, like, business camp. So, as far as self goes, I would say imposter syndrome's at the top of the list because I think that informs I think many of us have issues with doubting ourselves and self-sabotaging and doing things that we don't even realize are ingrained, almost like ancestral patterns that we've just inherited from people. Not we don't notice it until someone points it out to us. So I think that's a big one. And that really informs, like I said, how people interact in the world, how they price things, how confident they are in general, blah, blah, blah. So that imposter syndrome one is a big one. The businessy side thing that I see, like basically with everyone that I work with, is just a complete lack of focus and clarity. Like
Yeah.
there's 8,000 things that they offer because as photographers, we can shoot puppies
Yes.
and food and golfers and fashion people and whatever. We can. We have a camera. Most of us have the skills to like at least do an okay job at most of those things. Granted, all of those things have their own specialities and stuff like that. But so we think there's this lack mindset. I got to take everything I can get. And I'm just going to, and then people get stressed out and flustered. They don't know what to blog about or talk about or because they're just all over the place. They're spread really thin. Not to
Yeah.
say when you first start out that you shouldn't try different things, because I do think
Right.
that's how you figure out what you like and what you don't like. So if you're just starting out, experiment a little bit. But if you've been in business a few years and you're just like, why am I not? It's almost always because there's a lack of clarity. There's like a lack of content creation plan, a lack of social media marketing plan. There's a lack of who is your ideal client, what's your offer. There's just it's like a mess. And that's something that can easily be fixed in
Yeah.
conjunction with some of the deeper self work. And voila.
And okay, I want to
Yeah.
go back to something that you just said because I think that this is a really good example. So, for the people who are listening who are like, oh, stuff like, oh, mindset, and is this stuff really important? And we've talked a lot about foundational stuff. You just mentioned an incredibly common place where money mindset has a real and like tangible effect on your business. So, the idea that this kind of scarcity mindset. I have to take everything that comes in the door because there's not enough out there for me to just focus on one thing, or I don't have just a growth mindset. I have a scarcity mindset that leads to the very real and tangible issue in your business where you're chasing everything and getting nothing done.
Right.
So I just think that's such an important or such a example of like where these issues pop up in very real places in your business and an imposter syndrome getting back to pricing and I can't charge this much and that's the one that we hear a lot of is oh
Yeah.
I'm new so I can't charge that much and I'm like your client doesn't know that you're new and also if they're willing to pay it then you can charge that much.
That's
Th-
right. That's
yeah,
right.
it's
And I
you're the
think
only one who knows you're new. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of the terms we hear around mindset, the whole I think everyone is sick of the personal catalog of words, like imposter syndrome, and we
Right.
hear the words all the time. And so, yeah, I get annoyed with myself talking because I use these words to describe these things, but that doesn't change the fact that on an energetic level in our human bodies, like these things exist. So we have to put words to them, and people have figured out words that work, like imposter syndrome. So at least we can communicate what we mean when we're talking about these things. But if you're sick of hearing about it, that's, I guess, maybe rethink it a little bit because it's there. And there's a reason that there's such a massive influx in people being interested in this kind of stuff because it's real and it can change sort of everything about the way that you show up, not just in your business, but in your life too, which is
Yeah.
pretty cool. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So I said that I wanted to talk with you about this. I'm gonna dig into this a little bit. This tarot
okay.
thing. This tarot thing
Oh,
is awesome. And this is from somebody who I am not a spiritual person. That's not my thing. I'm very much science and fact and show me proof. But the way that you explained it the other day was truly compelling to me. Was like, I buy this. I buy this. And because I think the way that we even discussed it was this idea that who cares what the mechanics are behind it? Who cares why it works or how it works or if it even works? If it gets you to the result that you need, then who cares if it's something spiritual or if it's just
a
confirmation bias?
placebo in
I'm just
science? No?
Yes, exactly. It's
Yeah.
confirmation
Yeah.
bias. I'm looking for it, so therefore I find it.
That's right.
Okay, cool. Guess what? You still found it. And
That's
I
right.
think that's the thing. Is like you talked about the coin flip. And I think you and I talked about this the other day with my wife. Sometimes she'll ask me, "Hey, should I do this one or this one?" And if I don't really have an opinion one way or the other, I'll just pick one because I know that it will force her to have that kind of gut reaction of, I was hoping you'd say
That's
this one.
right.
Okay, well, now you know what you want.
And that gut reaction is so quick before our brains come in. It's a fraction of a second, but you know
Yep,
it. It's just a little spark, but
yep.
that's my favorite thing. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, this is great. So you're doing this through tarot where you're saying like, "Hey, look, here are the things that these cards are saying," or whatever. I don't know anything about tarot, but I
Yeah.
assume that's the way it's done.
Yeah.
And the only thing
I
I know about tarot is what Professor Trelawney taught me in Harry Potter. That was a Harry Potter
Harry Potter.
reference
Yep.
for
Got
anybody.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Sybil. Oh, Sybil.
Yeah. Oh, so
Anything
funny.
that's
Yeah.
basically all I know about tarot. But
I can explain a little bit of the
yeah,
approach
yeah.
just for people that are like, "Huh?" And
What
traditionally
is this
tarot is
tarot?
just yeah, tarot or tarot or I don't know, whatever. I just say tarot is 78 cards made up of major arcana, 22 major arcana. You see like the tower and the magician and death and all that stuff. And then the four suits, cups, wands, pentacles and swords, just like a deck of cards pretty much. And they all have images on them. The original, sort of one of the original decks, it goes back to Italy and the 15th, 14th century. It goes back a ways, and I'm sure farther than that. But nowadays, there's a Rider Waite deck from like the early 20th century that people classify as like the original. Anyway, so that's where the meanings come from. And just like storytelling, it really what I do is like a 5-card spread. Each card kind of represents a thing, like something maybe you're needing to move away from, something you're maybe needing to pay attention to, for example. And I have someone bring their business or personal grievances into the session and I look at all the cards and the reading part, the part that takes a little bit of skill is actually like piecing them together as a story because individually they may have a different meaning than they do together, which that's where the intuitive kind of part of it comes in, where I'm trying to make things as clear as possible for the person listening. That said, it's ink on paper if you wanna believe that. It's 78 cards on a deck of cardboard, and that's it. Or you can totally believe the other end of the spectrum where there's some spiritual deity or energy that's, like, making sure that these cards are the ones that show up and that the messages that come out of my mouth are coming from them or something. It doesn't matter. Like, you can truly believe either one because I am not talking to dead people or predicting lottery numbers or anything like that. I am just saying what's on the cards in reference to whatever the query is. And usually that is enough for people to have that same coin flip reaction where they're like, "Oh, I knew it," or "I thought so." And it's always oddly accurate and resonant for people. It's a bizarre thing to watch on my end because, yeah, I've studied the cards in terms of I understand to a degree what they mean. But like I said, I'm like spiritual light. I'm not like super into it. I'm not like a master astrologist or anything like that. I just like the pictures and they're pretty. And it's like we just talked about, it's a tool that I have found works really profoundly, really quickly with people because they're forced to reckon with their intuition. It's not an intellectual exercise at all. It's very personal and it's very, and people cry. People, it's just a very, yeah, personal experience, I guess is the best word I can
Yeah.
think of.
So you said that you start and end your coaching with a reading. What do you see different between the beginning and the end?
Yeah, that's a good question. And to be clear, when I say start and end, it's my 8-week program. So we do one full session of tarot and then another full session of tarot. So it bookends this 8-week experience. And sometimes we do a little bit in between. But the biggest thing that I see, there's a lot of emotion in both sides of it. There's either the emotion of recognizing what needs to change and back to giving yourself permission. I think what the cards do is really open that door for people where they feel like, oh, yeah, okay, someone's seeing this or they're seeing me or I'm finally getting something reflected back to me that I know to be true. And that's really powerful for people. But generally at the end, I think there's just more confidence, which is really interesting. Like the takeaways are a lot more, not less emotional, but they have a little bit more energy and excitement to them because people want to know what's next. They're ready for it.
Yeah.
It's not as heavy, I think, as the beginning when people are really reckoning with some intense stuff. And I didn't intend for it to be that way. And hopefully so far I've had feedback that I provide a very like comfortable, safe space for people to be open. But I think people ultimately really like the process in the sense that they get to just go deeper than they usually get to go with a business program.
Yeah, it almost sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm just putting words into your mouth, or again, if there's confirmation bias coming from me, because this is what I was looking for. But it almost sounds like that initial reading deals with a lot of past and where am I right now. But then that last one, they've come into it with this is now going to tell me where things go from here, which I think if
Yeah.
that's correct, feels exactly what a course in a coaching program should do. Here's where I am right now, and here's all the baggage that I bring to it. Here's all the reasons that I feel like I haven't been able to succeed now. But then by the end of it, you should be looking forward to, okay, now I have a brand new lease on life. I can see that things are gonna go differently from here than they had up until this point. And now show me where we go from here. I don't That's really cool.
Yeah, and that's a great way of putting it. I think you nailed it, and I think for people like yourself that are more pragmatic and objective minded about things, I think the value in not ascribing like spirituality to this, like it doesn't have to be that, really gives folks with that mindset a chance to reflect in a place that doesn't get opened up very much. And I think that in the beginning, like you said, like that holding up the mirror piece is super powerful for people. And when done in the context of a business course, I find that, and I do individual business readings as well, just on the side, but I find that in that container, people are a lot more comfortable showing up because it isn't as blue or whatever as like it could be because there's like the word, maybe because there's the word business in there. I don't know. But because we're taking we're taking some of the onus and putting it on the business and not just the person. And I think it works really well. I was very surprised that it worked at all. I had been during COVID, I just decided I wanted to learn the cards more. It just seemed like a fun thing to do. And we were all very bored for a long time. And I started doing this weekly newsletter every Monday 2 years ago. And so I just do pick a card, like there's 3 cards and you can pick a card and read about what it means. So it's just like a little mini newsletter. And then people started asking me like, do you do readings? And because it was COVID again, I just added it as an option on Zoom. And so it would just connect just like we are right now. And I would do a small reading and the response was really surprising for me. People were like, that was amazing. I have regulars and it's not something I ever anticipated. And I'm not going super deep with it. Like I haven't taken classes or I just learned what I wanted to learn and I try and provide this tool, but I'm not like super into it. I don't know if that makes sense. But then I thought I could just use this in my coaching because it seems to really open people up and help them get from A to B in an emotional way or like whatever that block is, imposter syndrome, whatever mindset stuff, way faster than if I'm just chatting with them. And then, as we already said, it repels just the right people. And
Yep.
those that are curious enough or open minded enough are the folks that I want to work with anyway. So it's been a cool journey as far as how did I get tarot to be part of my photo business coaching program?
Yeah. Now I feel like we should do another podcast where you just do a reading for me.
Okay.
I think that would be fascinating. Like I
Yeah.
again, as a naturally skeptical person, this still feels really fascinating to me because I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on it doesn't have to be a spiritual thing. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
a mystical thing. It can be something where it's psychology doing its job,
Yeah.
you know,
That's
and
right. And it
that's
could be
fascinating.
spiritual, but it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
yeah, yeah.
It's
That's
like
cool.
I was like raised Catholic and I'm not anymore, but like, when I die, I end up at like gates and there's just someone named St. Peter there. I'll be like, holy crap. Like they were right. But
Ah,
it might not happen. So it's
right?
just one of those things. It's the same with this. It's like maybe there's some wild spiritual energy that's guiding all of it. And
Yeah.
someday you'll find out that's what happened. But
Yep.
it doesn't matter for right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Let's see. Man, there's a lot of other things that I want to talk to you, but we've been going like 45 minutes now. So I should probably,
Yeah.
I don't know anything that you
Whatever.
were like, I want to make sure that we cover this, Chris.
No, no, I think just that piece about clarity has already been spoken about. I think it's for people feeling really stuck. I just say clarity is really it's the answer, but it's a
Yeah.
complex answer. So it's something to really look at personally, all this internal stuff. What are you feeling muddy and stuck
Yeah.
about? And then it's the external businessy stuff. Do you have a plan? Do you know your numbers? Do you know if you're just like, I want to make more money? Do you know why? What are you going to spend it on? Do you know this stuff? Are you clear? And I think that's the biggest thing that I like reminding people of. That's usually where they should start if they're stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a really important point is this idea that like when we throw this word clarity around that we're talking about in so many different aspects, not just clarity and purpose and what is it that I want to do. Who is it that I want to do this for? Why do I do it? What am I going to do with that money? Getting clarity on those, but then also those very practical things, clarity on what am I doing this week? And is it actually leading me where I want to go? And you talked about the two ships thing. And I like to
Yeah.
think of it as this idea of if I don't have clarity, then I can hustle all I want, but I'm actually doing myself like more harm if I'm hustling in the wrong direction. I'd be better off just standing
Yes.
still. And yeah, so, this idea of getting clarity in your business. And I think that it has to start foundationally. It has to start with what am I doing? Who am I doing this for? Why am I doing this? And then you can build on top of that. The what am I going to do? How am I going to do it?
Totally. And chances are, if there isn't any fun in that equation, if you're not enjoying it, that you shouldn't do it. And there's a level of work that is work that we have to do. But for the most
Yeah.
part, really checking in with yourself and asking yourself that why am I doing this? Sometimes it is just a money thing. And sometimes that's a temporary fix to a big problem in your personal life. But the sustainability part of the equation doesn't work unless you're having a little bit of fun. There has to be some level of enjoyment in some part of the process or just like doing the thing because we're creative people, because doing the thing because you feel compelled to do it
Yeah.
is important.
Yeah.
I think
That's
I was gonna
awesome.
say something else, but I lost it.
That's all
Um,
right. I think that's a really good place to end though, is, that we're talking about all of this stuff. But yeah, if you don't enjoy it, and if it's not what drives you naturally anyway, because you and I aren't talking to a bunch of like accountants. We're talking to people who are, I don't know, maybe accountants are just as passionate about accounting as photographers are about taking photos. Maybe, I don't know. But we're talking to people who are in a business that naturally allows you to bring your passions to the table and to use those and to chase those down. Yeah, I think that's a great spot to stop. The Photo Business Help podcast, what's the URL for that?
So you can just go to photobizhelp.com/listen or on Instagram at photobizhelp. There's all the links in the link tree bio thing,
Excellent.
including the greenhouse, which is the 8-week program with the tarot and all that stuff that we talked about. The application and all that stuff is there too, or
Excellent.
at photobizhelp.com/the greenhouse.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
So yeah, photobizhelp.com is like the hub for all of the things
Yeah.
Natalie.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Appreciate.
that's the main thing.
Perfect. Perfect.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much
This
for
was a
doing
fun
this.
chat.
Yep.
Yeah, of course.
All right. All right. See ya.